Hello and welcome again from the Free and Secular Gallery, the Smithsonian's National Museum of Asian Art. I'm Yin Chen, Program Specialist at the museum. So as Aparna just mentioned, we are here today for another Friday Art Inspired Meditation session. And our session today will begin with a meditation practice led by Aparna and will be followed by spotlight talk and Q&A with Wei Tian Yan, a fellow at the Free Secular who specializes in Chinese art. And so today it's Lunar New Year. To celebrate the Lunar New Year, we will be looking at a painting of plum tree, which typically bloom around Lunar New Year time. So thank you for joining us today again. And now I will turn it over to Aparna.
Thank you so much, Yin for kickstarting our session this Friday. And I wish to start by sharing with all of you my heartfelt wishes on this new lunar year. And to all those who are celebrating the year of the ox, I wish you a very happy, healthy, and prosperous new year. And today's artwork, as Yin just mentioned, will be plum blossoms. And we'll start by taking a first look at this hand scroll. So here we have this really long hand scroll, about almost 4 feet long. And it's a painting of plum blossoms. So we'll just briefly zoom into the artwork. You can see that part of this hand scroll is a painting of plum blossoms right there. Plum blossoms painted with ink on silk. An artist known only as Yan Shu. It's from between the late, the middle 12th to the 14th century. And the painting also has a few colophons attached to it. So this hand scroll will be our inspiration for meditation practices this Friday afternoon. So now I will pause the screen share. And let me share with you very briefly what the overview of our practice today will be like. So in today's meditation, we'll literally be engaging and interacting with the art through some holding of posture or hand gesture, through breathing, and through some visualizations. And so we'll be intermittently gazing at the artwork and then meditating and then again repeating that process. So if for any reason this practice doesn't feel very meditative to you, I invite you to click on this link that Yin just shared in the chat, and you can engage with the artwork in your own unique way. So if that's more meditative to you, please feel free to practice it in that way. But if you'd like to come along, then let me start by sharing a hand gesture, which we will be practicing in the meditation. So we're going to be bringing our hands to the shape of a flower in a gesture called Padma Mudra. So just as we practice this, you could warm up your hands by making movements to the fingers, fists, and then just radiating out those fingers like pins of light from a star. Then you could rotate your fists clockwise, counterclockwise. Maybe do a few shoulder rolls. And practice with what feels right for your body now. What is optimal to you? You could practice that. When all of that is complete, we'll bring the hands together like we're saying Namaste, Anjali Mudra. And then we'll open out the index, middle, and ring fingers, while the little fingers and the thumbs stay connected. And when we are practicing this mudra, it would be nice if we can hold it in front of the heart center. And while we practice the meditation with the mudra, you can hold it for as long as you can. And if at some point it becomes really distracting and it's so hard to like hold it this way, feel free to rest your palms on the knees or thighs. Okay. So now let's get started with our practice. So let's take a moment to center our attention. Let the hips, the seat, the feet, back, all the points of contact where the body is supported in space. Take the time to relax into these points of contact and support. So we begin to cultivate a quality of ease, the physical presence of the body. And then we'll briefly check in with our body's sensations, moving our attention from the feet through the legs, through the hips, back, shoulders, arms, the face. And if we notice that there's a chance for us to relax the body in any of these spaces, maybe through intentional movements, like shifting a little bit, adjusting our posture, or maybe taking deep breaths in and tensing all the muscles. So we want the body to levitate. And then completely letting it go. So doing everything we need to so we can be relaxed. And at the same time, sitting upright. Balancing relaxation with awareness. And then we'll place both palms to the heart space and take slow, deep breaths in. Inhaling through nose. Exhaling maybe through the mouth. We always breathe in the present moment. So let the breath anchor us, being here, being now. And by virtue of the palms placed on the heart space, let our attention rest in there, in the heart space, the seed of unconditional love and compassion. Like we're seated here in our innate reserves of a power that arises from experiencing ourselves as embodiments of love. And we could visualize the life force, the energy that's making it all possible in the form of light. The energy powering this experience be visualized as light, any color of your choice. And may that light follow your attention, which hopefully we're able to focus on the heart space and draw this light to that space. We're here now, and we're together. Feel free to relax your palms down. Feel free to visualize this light being channelized through the whole body. Let light flow into the eyes. As Yin Yang shared, these plum blossoms resiliently spring up in the harshness of cold winter. And notice how the colors of this painting, the background and the color in the flowers, or the light coming from the flowers, reflect that moving contrast. Let's zoom in to look closely so we can appreciate the delicateness of these flowers. And if the mind at this point is like, I know what these flowers are like, let's just come back, reminding ourselves to slow down, to really take the time to savor visually the beauty of each of these blossoms that we can see. Notice the diversity in the shapes of the flowers. When you look at a fully blossomed flower, how many petals do you notice? Notice the curves of these stamens. And notice these flowers distributed along each of these branches. Notice how the plum blossoms signal as an inspiration, inspiring us to rise with courage, to rise with fortitude, even in the face of adversity, just by their mere presence. Let's continue to look at across the scroll, scrolling to the right side, really savoring the beauty of these blossoms, one flower at a time. Now we'll briefly pause the sharing, come back to our hand gesture. We'll bring our hands into the Padma Mudra, like we are embodying the five petaled plum blossom. And remember how energy follows attention. So imagine your breath and the pranic energy, the life force in it, reaching out as light through the shoulders, into the arms, all the way into the hands. Each finger like a petal of a plum blossom. Take a few breaths here, witnessing what are the qualities it invokes in the form of bodily sensations, maybe in the form of thoughts, feelings, or emotions. When that feels complete, we may relax the hands, and then making any adjustments to the body, to the posture. We could come back to gaze at the artwork again. And this time, as we look closely, let's look out for any shapes that seem to resemble the buds of these blossoms. Notice the shapes that suggest the presence of buds along these long, moving branches. When we savor the beauty of the buds waiting to blossom, let's again close our eyes or look away from the screen so we can pause looking at the art and now embodying those buds by joining all the fingers, the fingertips, while tenting the center of the palms. Let's hold here for a few breaths and notice what is the response of the mind body as we embody these buds. When that check-in feels complete, you could relax the hands. Now come back to the artwork again. This time, paying attention to the trunks and branches that that seem to be holding space for these blossoms and the buds. Notice the knots, the nodules all along these branches. And these nodules, especially along these branches, serving as focal points for where the tree would eventually be sending out more buds, each bud eventually becoming a plum blossom. And as we look closely at this part of the tree's trunk, you might be intrigued by what this marking here is. Well, that's a perfectly valid experience, a moment of curiosity. We could remind ourselves that all of our questions and curiosities will be answered in a few moments from now. So we can come back being more present and being more available to the presence of this tree laden with plum blossoms. So coming back to the trunk, notice the solidity of the trunk. Notice the quality of resilience that it shows by standing strong with all these marks of time, impressions of its journey through time. While braving the harsh winter, and yet serving as a conduit for the energy of life to flow through so these blossoms can bloom at the right time. Maybe it makes us wonder at all the activity that must be happening underneath the calm exterior of these branches and tree trunks. So now we'll practice embodying these qualities of the tree branches and trunks in our own self. So pausing the looking, let's sit in a way that we can attune to the qualities of stability within our being. How do we see stability expressing itself through this body? What is it that gives it structure? And what supports that structure to be able to sit upright and resist gravity wherever we are? Notice the breath quietly happening underneath this stable exterior, the movement underneath the stillness, a sense of ease and lightness contrasting the solidity of the body, its physical presence. Now, let's join our palms together and we'll bring the hands to the shape of a bud. And like spring, breathing life into these trees and the blossoms. Let's inhale, breathing lights, breathing life's light into the palms, blossoms opening out, then breathing out and closing back to the bud. And if it helps you to embody the plum blossoms in the tree while gazing at it, you can practice this with your eyes open, viewing the plum blossoms and the tree. And whenever that feels complete, we'll now continue our exploration of the background, noticing the different marks, the seals here, the left side. Maybe we can now look for the seals across this scroll. We find more and more seals towards the edges of this painting. And gently moving our eyes across with the colophon, a part of it visible here. And maybe if you could read the script here, take the time to read through what is written here. And if we don't know how to read the script, we could just allow our mind to come up with all the questions. And now, looking at the entire scroll at once. Maybe plum blossoms as harbingers of spring remind us of the promise of rebirth and renewal. A message that we could definitely energize ourselves with as we embrace this new year of the ox, particularly after what our last orbit around the sun has been. Maybe join palms in prayer, offering a silent namaste, honoring the creative energy in this hand scroll, creative energy of the artist, of those who contributed to creating this entire length of the hand scroll, to the calligraphers. We also offer a namaste to the light within. Finally, maybe offer a namaste to each other as a way of saying, the light in me honors the light in you. Thank you so much for choosing to share your time, attention, energy, and presence with me. Namaste.
Thank you for leading the lovely meditation practice, Aparna. And Wei Tian, now let's explore more about the beautiful painting with you. So the digital floor to you, Wei Tian.
Thanks, Yi, for having me here today. I'm very happy to be here as always. And also thanks, Aparna, for the very wonderful meditation session. I really enjoyed it myself. So first of all, happy Lunar New Year to everyone again. The plum tree, or the Prunus mume on the screen over here, is a special type of plant in East Asia that typically blooms in the winter around the Lunar New Year. So it seems very appropriate to look at this painting on the first day of the year of the ox. For my discussion today, I'd like to give you an overview of this painting, its painting technique, and the symbolism of this tree in East Asia. But before that, I want to introduce you with the book by Maggie Pickford called Ink Plum, The Making of a Chinese Scholar Painting Genre. I have just put the info of this publication in the chat box. This is a very good book that surveys the history of plum painting in China and offers some discussions on this painting that we're looking at right now. So if you'd like to learn more about this work after today's session, this might be a good place to start. Now, let us take a look at this painting together. The handsome image is done in the scroll format, commonly known as the hand scroll in East Asia. When looking at this type of painting, one is supposed to proceed from right to left and slowly open the image section by section. What do I mean by that? We usually open the scroll about a shoulder width, and after looking at this section, you close this part and open another section about the same length. This particular viewing experience is very important because it helps to set the image in motion, almost like a moving image. And the viewer could animate the painting with their hands while enjoying the picture simultaneously. The hand scroll here depicts a close-up view of a particular section of the plum tree. You can see a portion of the tree trunk over here to the left of this image, and a number of branches are grown from the body of this tree and extends further to the right. This kind of composition offers a quite striking viewing experience, as if we're peeking in through a window. It seems that we're staying indoors and the tree blossoms outside in your garden during a snowy day. It is perhaps too cold to go outside, and you are glancing at this beautiful flower from inside. This vertical painting format frames the scene like a window, offers a snapshot of this winter flower for us. One important stylistic feature of this painting, if we could move to a close-up section over here, is the extremely delicate flower petals we have just looked at. These lovely white petals look shimmering on the silk surface. The painter here used a special technique called reverse saturation to achieve this kind of effect. This term describes a reverse process of painting flowers in China. Earlier painters preferred to use ink wash to create a saturated flower petals, but the artist of this image defines the blossoms as negative space. In other words, the flower is first outlined with very delicate line, and then the background is saturated with ink wash. In this way, the unpainted white surface of the silk help highlight the pristine purity of the flower, which is a very important characteristic that the painter is always trying to convey. As many of you probably already know, the plum blossom carry a variety of symbolic meanings in East Asia, because it usually blooms during the winter when the rest of the plant world is still dormant. It comes to signify important human characters such as resilience and fortitude. Also, because this kind of plant flourish before the coming of the spring, it also serves to convey a sense of hope and the promise of a better future. I'd like to end my discussion by reading a poem that is inscribed behind this painting. As you can tell, there are many texts that are attached to the scroll. It is a very common practice in China for collectors and viewers to inscribe poems or essays that tie to the theme of this painting. In this way, this text actually transforms the entire scroll into a living document, something that continues to grow even during its circulation. The poem that I'm going to read to you correspond to the section over here, especially these two rows. These two vertical lines that I point with my... The writer says, and I read, "The days grow longer with the advent of spring. The plum blossom, like snow, will melt away." So thanks everyone for taking a close look at this poetic image with me, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
That's fascinating, Wei Tian. And we do have a couple questions about the ratios. Does the seal tell us anything about the painting? If you could tell us more about those seals.
Sure. I think all of you probably have already observed there are so many seal impressions that are attached to this painting. For example, if we take a close look over here at the beginning section of the scroll, there are numerous red markings over here. All of them came to signify a collector's seal. In other words, they mean who had owned this scroll in the previous life. And some of these seals can be easily identified because this scroll is actually had a very prominent provenance. the two large seal over here, which belongs to the Qing Dynasty Jiaqing Emperor, which means that the scroll was once in the Qing Dynasty Imperial Collection. And the seal above this one, another large one, belongs to the Qianlong Emperor, who was actually Jiaqing Emperor's father. So there is a father and son relationship over here, that the scroll was passed down from a father's hands to his son. And there are more seals toward the end of the scroll. If we can take a look over here. And all for the scrolls at the end of the scroll, also some of them also belongs to the Qing Imperial Collection. But I do want to draw your attention to three seals that are right next to the plum blossom over here. These three seals belong to a very important collector in Ming Dynasty China, roughly in the 16th and 17th century. And this collector was so prominent, and his name was Xiang Yuanbian. And some of his paintings later went to the Imperial Collection of the Qing China. So if you ever encounter his seals on a painting, it means that it is probably come from a very distinguished provenance.
Yeah, thank you, Wei Tian. And we have a follow-up question about those seals. So we are wondering, like, are some of those seals applied before the scroll is painted?
In most common scenarios, those seals were applied after the painting was done. So in most common cases, the elegant collectors usually try to avoid the painting surface. So like the Xiang Yuanbian himself, he has imprinted his seals right next to the painting, and the seal was not on any part of the painted image. But some of the Qing Imperial collectors, they sometimes overlaps with the painting, like the ones over here. So it does vary from case to cases, but in most cases, they're printed before the painting. They're printed after the painting was made. Sorry.
Thank you. And we also have a question about, so there's a Chinese character. I mean, there are two Chinese characters on the tree trunk. So could you show us that and tell us like what it says?
Yes, that's a very good observation. I did not get a chance to talk about it in my discussion. Those two characters read Yanso, which corresponds to the artist's name of this painting. But unfortunately, we haven't been able to identify who the artist actually was. So they only serves as a marking for the artist, the actual painter.
Thank you. And so there's a question. We also have a question about like, is it still common to plant plum trees now, like for people maybe at their backyard?
Yes, if there are actually a lot of plum trees, generally speaking, in East Asia. If you ever visit East Asia over the Lunar New Year, one of the actually costumes was to visit the plum tree gardens, where you enjoy the flower blossom, and especially with your family. So it's a part of the festivity during the winter seasons.
Yeah, so viewing the plum tree, it's like it's part of the festivity. And we also have a question about like, do people they bring plum tree? Do they purchase it from somewhere and then bring it home to celebrate the New Year?
Yes.
So
sometimes they would actually cut a branch of the plum tree and brought it back into the home. They will put the branch of the plum into a vase so that you can enjoy the plum and the scent of the plum blossom during the winter times, even indoors. So it's a very elegant way of display the flower.
Yes. And so you tell us like the character on the trunk, it's the name of the painter. And could you tell us more about who is the painter?
We are able to date this painter roughly to the late 13th or early 14th century. It's either the late Southern Song Dynasty or the early Yuan Dynasty. But we know very little who the painter actually is. So this is everything that I know so far. there has been a lot of hypothesis and speculation about who the painter might be, but we are not able to like identify, make a specific speculation so far.
Yes. So when you talk about like there's like a tradition to of viewing plum blossoms during the New Year. So someone's interesting about like did this tradition influence the Japanese cherry blossom festival tradition?
It's not so much of a influence, but it's a cultural tradition that's shared both in Japan, Korea, and China. There are a lot of exchange of plant and botanical plants in East Asia across these three different countries. So it's not very clear who influenced who, but it's more of a heritage that inherited by both three countries.
Yeah, I lived in Japan for a short time, and I know Japanese people they do also go to view plum trees like when it's in full bloom. And so, are there other painting from the same artist? Since we don't know much about this artist Yan So, but do we know like there are other painting from this artist? Maybe not in our collection, but like
we do not know if there is more paintings done by this artist. But the scroll that we are looking at right now is actually part of a two scroll that came to the free cycle at the same time. And both of them were on the subject matter of plum blossom. And the other one is called The Breath of the Spring. If you search it on the Free Cycle website, you will find it. The Breath of the Spring and the plum blossom that we're looking at right now, both of them depicted a very elegant blossom of the plum tree, but they use very different techniques. So if you'd like to do a little bit visual analysis and contrast by yourself, it might be interesting to look at these two paintings together.
We also have a question about, is this painting for religious practice, or it's more just for secular use?
That is a very good question. There are Buddhist laymen who are known for their painting of plum trees. So maybe there are. It really depends on who the creator of the painter is. For this painting, we do not know if it is ever used in a religious context, but there are other paintings who are produced to serve as aid of enlightenment, so to speak. So there is certain kind of religious element attached to this kind of plant images in China.
Yeah, and we also just have a question about like, do we know like how much this painting? What is the monetary value of this painting?
I actually don't know, but I would assume that a painting of this kind, especially that it has passed through the hands of the emperor and very important collector in the Ming Dynasty, it should have valued a lot, but I don't know exactly how much it valued. I think someone asked, I do want to ask about the issue of the monetary value. There's actually an inscription that is attached to the end of this image. If I can show you very quickly over here. This was an inscription that was made by the collector that I just mentioned, the Ming Dynasty collector, whose name is Shang Yuanbian. And he said, I spent how much money to purchase this painting from someone else. But as you can tell, the specific price, the tail of the silver is erased on the scroll. So we do not know how much he spent actually, but it could be known if it is actually documented on the scroll in pre-modern times.
Yeah. So I think we want to go back to, so you briefly share with us like how the petals, the plum blossom petal are painted. So it's like by a technique called reverse saturation. And yes. Could you just tell us about like how does artists keep the ink wash from coloring the blossom? Just more about like how it's done.
This is a process that requires a lot of calculation by the artist hand. I mean calculation means that the artist has to design where the petals falls before he applies the ink wash. So every flower petals are carefully outlined, so the artist will know that this is a part that the ink wash shouldn't touch. So once all the flower petals are outlined, and then he carefully applied the ink wash to the background, make sure that it doesn't touch any part of the flower petal. So it's a very meticulous process that requires a lot of meditation beforehand. Where do I want to put the ink wash and how this should be made?
Yeah, impressive. So we also have a question. How was this piece of art chosen to be as free, or like how it's come to the museum? Do you know anything about it?
This scroll came to the museum, I believe, in 1931, according to the accession number. Like I said earlier, it was part of there are two scrolls coming to the museum collection at the same time, and both of them are the painting of the plum tree. They belong to a Chinese collector earlier in China, and the Chinese collector decided to bring those two paintings into an exhibition that was take place in the early 20th century in Japan. And then the specific details I cannot recall, but then the museum acquired this painting from a Japanese dealer in New York. So it's roughly the trajectory of the life of the scroll.
It's like a long journey.
Yes, from China to Japan and to the US. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So we also have a question about like how much has the painting faded? How stable are the material to paint this hand scroll?
The silk surface is actually a very delicate material. As you can tell, there are parts of the scroll. There are white scratches showing that the scroll has experienced a very long life, and some part of it did not hold so well together. So it will require very extensive care for curators and conservators to preserve this kind of paintings. And there are some vertical strokes over here. You can tell as well. I'm not sure what happens to this painting, but in some other cases, because when a scroll was scrolled up together like a scroll, they're usually tied up at the very outside. So sometimes this horizontal lines are created by the ties themselves. So it's a part of the materiality of the painting.
And obviously, people are really curious about how this beautiful plum tree is painted. So we also have a question about the branches. Are they painted after background in ink?
From what I can tell from this painting, the tree branches is similar to the process of making the petals. They are also first outlined. So everything, basically the tree trunk, the branch, and the flower petals, they're carefully outlined and designed on the surface, and then the ink wash applied. And the artist also trying to accentuate how the tree trunk looks. So maybe additional layers of ink are also applied on the tree trunk to help the tree trunk stand out more obviously. So there are multiple layers of applying ink on the silk surface.
And just to follow up about like how those branch trunches and branch paintings. So do only master ink painter know how to apply the ink wash background without any brush stroke showing?
That's a very, very good question. There are a couple of ways of doing it. First of all, it determines on whether you're painted on paper or silk. They have different observance of the ink wash. If you're painting on a silk surface like this one, the painter might use a specific brush that fits to the painting surface, and then use very light ink brush and apply multiple layers, so that in this way that the brush stroke, so to speak, doesn't show very obviously on the silk surface. Again, there are a lot of calculation on the artist's part on how to avoid showing the brushwork.
Yeah, Thank you, Etienne. And to wrap up our session today, I just want to share a really something Scott shared with us in the chat. And he said he liked the just position of the dead branch, which has fallen away, and the new shoots which are emerging. I really love like what he shared in the chat, so I just want to share it with you too. So thank you for sharing your knowledge and insight with us, Wei Tian, and also thank you, Aparna, for leading. And thank you for spending time with us today. And have a nice weekend and Happy Lunar New Year. 新年快乐. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yinying and Wei Tian. That was such an illuminating spotlight talk. And the method of creating this painting has inspired me to think about another way to meditate with it. In fact, it's so beautiful and calming that I could have like meditated for another half an hour just effortlessly like that. So thank you for that wonderful spotlight talk. And thank you everybody for joining us in this art-inspired meditation offering. We hope that you enjoyed our offering today. And once again, wish you all a very, very happy Lunar New Year. And we hope that you can come back to practicing with us on Monday with yet another meditation, and then next Friday with yet another artwork. So take care. Namaste. Have a very peaceful and mindful week.